Welcome, everybody. Normally I would be standing behind a podium. That's what I did last year. This year, no podium. And I feel kind of silly standing up behind it, especially with Ken here. So I'm going to sit down.
I make everyone feel silly. It's all right. It's all good.
And being silly is another, it's like a superhero strength.
That's right.
So let's have some fun today, talking about boldly going where museums haven't gone before, but potentially can. And I'm Steve Brant. I founded the Route 66 Spirit of America Museum in Stroud in June of 2023, so a little more than 2 years ago. And I want to thank OMA for the second year in a row giving me a slot to speak, because it's like, who knows me? But
I know you.
They think I have some useful ideas, and they partnered me up with Ken last year, and again he agreed today to add a little, well, I'm going to say gravitas, but actually no, he's just...
I'm just adding color to this. Yeah. A little humor.
Yes.
Keeping us on track.
Yes. So also say a prayer to the time gods that what I've got here actually fits into the allotted hour and 15 minutes.
That's correct.
Right? We have an hour.
Well, Bill's going to get up and leave, so it doesn't really matter. You got an hour and 15 minutes.
I've got it
You know,
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do
So
it.
the overall theme here is literally where do we want to go? As museums here in Oklahoma, where do we want to go? And I have a quote from Buckminster Fuller, who you're going to hear more about. We are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. And that's because a lot of us, well, if we don't think about it, we're just like, okay, we're bouncing around in life, and what's happening out in the world is basically what other people are doing. And we, try to fit in and make the best of it. Well, what I learned years ago from Buckminster Fuller is that the inventor mindset, which I celebrate in the museum, is a very powerful thinking tool. Even if you don't have, billions of dollars or celebrity status, what you do matters. So that's the question for today. Again, don't have to be famous. You can want the future to turn out a particular way, and there are things that we can all do in that direction. And wrong button. By the way, last year I was Clark Kent because I was reporting on how success for our nation is possible if you know where to look. Wish the real journalists were covering that kind of news, but I can do it, especially when I channel Clark Kent. And so the question is, who am I today? There's not much time. It's actually another theme because the world is moving at a pretty rapid pace these days. So I'm delighted that we have America's 250th birthday next year, because we kind of get a wave to catch, and we can potentially surf that wave again, pointing in a better direction. That's not an analogy I normally use.
No, but I like it.
But surfing, yes. And I don't want you to answer the question now. I just want you to think about it. Who is the guy with the black hat who was crawling along a gantry and fiddling with a rocket? Apropos scene for us being in Weatherford. But when I'm not making believe I'm somebody else, I am a real person, and I need to tell you that I've had a life, and it has driven me to create the museum because there were certain formative experiences, and I'm actually curious to know what some of your formative experiences were, because I want this to be a bit of a conversation. But there's too many people here for us all to do it. But for my piece of the puzzle, I'm autistic, and at age 7, growing up in New York City, I visited the United Nations, which imprinted me because it was a class trip. And boy, do they make a great presentation when a class of 7-year-olds shows up. It was like, world peace, it's our job. It's not a dream. It's not just, what, and nothing against Miss America. When they asked Miss America, what is your hopes? World peace. Well, there was this fancy building, and I'm 7, and I actually didn't know I was autistic at the time, but it gave me a kind of a mental wiring that from that point on, I was asking myself, wow, this is pretty amazing. Plus, when I was home, it was actually a war zone. World War II parents got married 2 weeks after they had met at the end of the war. Mom did not know that my dad was, in addition to being a brilliant musician, was actually kind of crazy. And not in a good way. I'm kind of crazy in a good way.
Yes.
My father was kind of crazy in a domineering, and if it's not my way, I'm going to make life hell for you, and physical violence, psychological violence, really unpleasant. I hid in my bedroom a lot. And so
He's come a long way, folks.
I'm not don't mean to get on the couch here, but life is a journey, and the old expression, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is true, especially in my case, because when you see all this violence and trauma, and then you're lucky enough to have visited the UN, you get a balancing act in your life. And then at age 8, because I'm 70 years old, I got the news that President Kennedy had just been assassinated. So now, okay, there's violence in America, holy moly. But I also, at age 8, was watching on the news, God bless Walter Cronkite, who I paid tribute to in the museum, was reporting on the space program. And boy, did he love the space program. He was friends with Arthur C. Clarke. When we landed on the moon, if you watched Walter Cronkite reporting, he was like a kid. He was like, oh boy. And I, of course, was a kid. I was 14 then. And so there's this balancing act that I had in my family experience, thanks to the UN. And then there's a balancing act I've had about all of society, thanks to President Kennedy's assassination and the space program, showing me that even a nation that suffers terrible tragedy can do good at the same time. And small sidebar, when Abraham Lincoln was dealing with the Civil War, guess what he found time to do? Anybody know? Authorize the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Oh my gosh. Going to the moon, big. Having a railroad across the country, big. So, what are we doing today that's equal? That's a question I'm going to ask later, but it feels like I ought to throw it out now. So I'm dealing with all this stuff. I'm imprinted from the UN trip, and in 1979, completely out of the blue, a guy I'm working with who's an architect hands me this book to read, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth by Buckminster Fuller. My first reaction was, what kind of a name is Buckminster Fuller? And what is this book about? And I read it at my friend's request. Hardest book I ever read. The way he writes, there would be like an entire page was one sentence. So I'm sitting there pulling it apart, but in the end, I learned this guy had figured out the actual scientific roadmap for world peace. In 1979, a lot of years after I visited the UN, and the UN didn't seem to be doing such a great job, reasons I can go into, but this guy had figured it out, because he was a scientist who thought in terms of systems, and I got so inspired by his work that I wound up discovering 2 other big pioneers in this whole notion of thinking in terms of systems, W. Edwards Deming, Russell Ackoff, who was actually my mentor for 10 years. This is a process of problem solving that is not commonly used, but is a very powerful tool for those of us who want to make boldly go where we've never gone before. The Einstein quote, the problems we face can't be solved with the same thinking we used when we got into them. Systems thinking is the new thinking that Einstein was referring to. And I actually tried to bring these ideas to the UN. They had a 50th anniversary conference in 1995. I went down there. I actually had a little booth. I was celebrating Buckminster Fuller and Deming and Ackoff, and people were like, "Who? What?" You know. And I went to a guy who was trying to help the UN be better, and I said, "Oh, so you're the guy who's going to help them prevent wars?" And he said, "Yeah. The minute one breaks out, we're going to stop it real fast." That's not preventing. That's still letting it happen. And what I had learned from this guy and the others, how to actually prevent wars from starting in the first place. Holy moly, again. Talk about boldly going where you've never gone before. Imagine getting rid of the root cause of war. That's another piece of systems thinking. Ryan Eisler, the Center for Partnership Systems, teaches the power of people working together, and in her case specifically, men and women working together, because there's a whole history of human civilization, and now we're not just talking America, we're talking civilization from day one. That she deals with President Clinton's Council on Sustainable Development. Turned out Clinton studied with Deming when he was the governor of Arkansas, so he kicked off something in the early 90s. The Huffington Post was brand new, and Arianna Huffington was looking for writers, and I was in her Rolodex, and I got an email. "We need writers. You won't get any money, but you might become famous." Okay, I had neither money nor fame,
That's a nice
so I went for the fame, and actually I got a little attention for some of the stuff that I wrote. So I got to be kind of a journalist. And then here I am, June 2023, the Route 66 Spirit of America, and that was not what I was supposed to do. Let's go back to the see what happens when you
Oh
get
dear,
it.
Ryan Walters home.
There we go. There we go. All right. Okay, so yes, 2023. That was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I am now, again, 2 years plus into this museum on Main Street in Stroud. It's only a storefront. It's not a huge
pretty
space,
cool storefront.
but I've packed it with displays covering all kinds of things related to pioneers, people following their dreams, inventing new ways of doing things, making mistakes along the way. Imagine a mindset where it's okay to make mistakes, because that's actually how you improve. Not something we learn in school, but something you learn from systems thinking. And God bless the Tulsa World News, they actually covered my grand opening, and I've got that framed and hanging in the lobby. Okay, that's gonna be the right button. There we go. So I have this passion that drives the museum, which is I had to find hope in hopeless times as a kid, and I want to help people find hope in hopeless times, because honestly, it feels like we're kind of in a Kennedy assassination moment here, but we don't have a space program to balance it out. So what can we do? Yeah, so I benefited from things back then, like television shows, the American Museum of Natural History, Central Park was across the street. And then again, as I mentioned, God sent me Bucky Fuller in 1979, and in 1980 I began trying to figure out if there was anything that I could do. And where I land on all this today is we've got a huge opportunity. Even as things seem desperate, in an emergency, something new can emerge. It's not an original statement on my part, by the way, but I love that. And what can emerge is a solution that's we are all in this together solution in a world where right now there's a lot of arguments over what the solution is, and those arguments are all based on, okay, I'm going to win and somebody else is going to lose. And win-lose solutions, the people who lose, not happy. You want a solution where everybody's happy. Such solutions exist, and I'll talk about that in a slide coming up. But here I want to pause, take a sip of water, and ask if anybody would like to volunteer. Again, you're being recorded. Maybe Ken could even be the guinea pig.
Sure.
What got you into this business? Who was your hero growing up, or whenever that light bulb moment was that this is what I want to do?
And be in the museum world?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and get smart. And I think we all have interesting stories of how we got into this. Mine was having finished my master's degree, at Indiana University of Bloomington in arts journalism. This is great. I'm applying to go on for my PhD. I've turned in my master's thesis. I come home for Christmas, and my grandfather is diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so, having just finished this, I was able to put my life on hold and care for my grandfather and my grandparents until sadly he passed away. We were waiting on the brain tumor, believe it or not, and he died of a heart attack.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so, but it's funny, that changed everything. All of a sudden I didn't want to go back. Even though I always wanted my PhD, I'd still like to do that someday if I find time somehow. I'd like to do it. But just because I love education for the sake of education. But I needed something else to do. So you start, I said, well, I gotta find a job. I gotta do something now. And so I started applying, and brief stint at American Airlines. I won't go into all of that with you. You can ask me about that later. But I knew I didn't want to do a corporate world for the next 40 years of my life. I was watching people like, oh, no, this isn't it. Got a call one day, and somebody said, Ken, there's a membership director position open at Gilcrease Museum. I said, okay, what's a membership director do? I knew the Gilcrease, I've been to classes there, but what does a membership director do? I don't know, Ken, but you like the arts, you should apply. Fast forward, 54 candidates later, they hired me. I happened to be the minority at the time. They had a lot of women in the museum, they had a lot of African Americans and some Hispanic. The white guy was sort of the anomaly at that time at the museum. I was like, okay, so I take it, but I'd always loved museums. My parents took me to museums, the Gilcrease, the Philbrook. When we would travel, we would always find a museum to go to, whatever city we went to. We found the museum, or other museum, whatever. And I absolutely loved it. I got involved with the Oklahoma Museums Association, and even though I'm doing Route 66 stuff right now, I have never left OMA. I mean, I've stayed involved, even when I have to rotate off the board, I come back on. They kept me involved because there is just something wonderful about museum people. The stories we tell, the history we hold, and the hope that we do provide to folks. It's that moment where even if you're having to cover a subject that's difficult, there's this moment where it's like, oh, but there's clarity. And I understand, and you're telling me, and you're showing me the artifacts or the art or whatever, and I have this moment, and I put the world away. And I'm now here in this moment. And I think museums do provide that for people. So I love museums.
Great insight.
So that's my story.
That's
my story.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well,
I'd like to interview you at the museum's podcast.
Oh, we'll do that sometime. That'd be fun.
You can get to Stroud.
sure. I get to Stroud frequently. I'm on the road a lot right now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Somebody else want to share?
Anybody else want to give us a couple of minutes on their origin story, so to speak? What made you a museum superhero?
Here we go. Right over here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm the curator at the USS Batfish, and being a war memorial person in a prior military, I was in between, and I started volunteering down there. The curator left, unfortunately, and we were in a hard place. They looked at me and they said, "You're it," and so that's what got me my position. But then my wife passed away from cancer 4 years ago, and I had just thrown my life into it.
Sure.
This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
That's awesome. Sorry folks for your loss. That's great.
Well, I'll just mention, you've all got a business card in your packet, and my cell phone is one of the easiest ways to reach me. If you feel like sharing your story, send me a text saying, "Hi, I've got a story to tell. Maybe you can interview me by Zoom, or maybe you want to come to Stroud and I'll interview you there." I am really curious because this is not, I don't know, if you want to make a lot of money, there's a lot of things you can do.
Museums aren't the answer for that.
But if you have a dream to make a difference,
Or become famous, like you did. That's pretty cool.
I was not famous in any of the things that I've done, except present company.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. So every person counts. Every museum counts.
Right.
And in order to launch the Oklahoma museums into the future, it's going to require what I'm also calling stretch thinking, because to stretch from problem solving based on the old way of thinking to problem solving based on systems thinking, it's a stretch. There we go. But it's not impossible, and here's an example.
American life in the mid-1970s was troubling to say the least. While the U.S. had recently withdrawn from Vietnam, the social and political fallout from this incredibly unpopular war would linger for years to come. Meanwhile, the Nixon administration was being investigated for the Watergate scandal, bringing a new kind of disgrace to the Oval Office. On top of all this was a historic energy crisis, record levels of inflation, and economic recession. People were disillusioned with the American dream, losing faith in a system that seems to be failing them on every level. This was the unfortunate setting for the bicentennial, America's 200th birthday that was quickly approaching on July 4th, 1976. While this was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime celebration on a national scale, few people were in a patriotic mood. It seemed the date would pass without much attention, until a group of ordinary people set out to create a celebration of their own. Now more than ever, America needed a reminder of its accomplishments, the incredible challenges it had overcome, and the values that had united its people for nearly 200 years.
I'm not going to say that I agree with everything in the setup to the launch of the train, but it wasn't an easy time, especially with the oil crisis. And the point of this is, these people were not famous. Restoring trains is a niche hobby. Not cheap, but it's just a hobby, and they got inspired. And they had a guy leading this effort who knocked on like 50 corporation doors before he finally found one corporation and said, okay, I get it, let's help you build your train. And that corporate leader went to 4 of his friends, and the total of 5 corporations, $1 million each. Now, around 1973, he had $5 million, which was real money, and that enabled them to buy old baggage cars and convert them, go around the country to museums to borrow things that were then going to be in this train, to finance this train going all over the country for over a year, the lower 48 states. This was humongous, and just ordinary people. So that's pretty inspiring. And there's another guy I like to pay tribute to, who was also just an ordinary guy who saw a problem, and that's Angel Delgadillo from Seligman, Arizona. Actually, this is Foreman, so but he's a good guy.
My name is Angel V. Delgadillo. I was born here in Seligman, Arizona. When World War started, all my 3 older brothers were drafted, and me as a kid, a young 14-year-old, became the man of the house. My dad bought this chair April of 1926 for $194. I've been using it since when I was in the 10th grade. Being a barber is one of the best colleges in the world, if you pay attention. My wife and I got married May the 11th, 1959. Wow. Vilma, my wife, of 64 years. My wife is a beautiful, beautiful person. Not just physically, in the heart. Her heart is bigger than the state of Arizona. When our government finished building 100 miles of freeway from Kingman to Ash Fork, a distance of 100 miles. History says that there were 9,000 automobiles using Route 66 every 24 hours. So the traveling public, when they opened up I-40, they took to it like ducks take to water. My simple thought was, we asked the state to make Route 66 a story from Seligman to Kingman. So I took it to the Chamber of Commerce. I called as many people with telephone numbers I had. We formed the Historic Route 66 Association of Arizona that moment. It's incredible what we the people have done for the people. When the state finally gave Route 66 its historic rebirth, I thought that was the ultimate. I figured that was the big thing. Then I started seeing people coming in here smiling from ear to ear. It is almost a fairy tale. It is almost incredible to believe that people come from all parts of the world to come and meet me. When I was still cutting hair and doing barber work, here they come in, they shake my hand, they embrace me, some people kiss me, some people cry, tears in their eyes. It's incredible. They're just so happy that we the people brought back Route 66 after our government decertified it, decommissioned it, brought the signs down, and told the world the end. We succeeded in doing the impossible. We humans can do so much for our neighbors. We can do so much for our own families, we humans. This is what I have learned. Now, as you're going through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, and Oklahoma City looks mighty pretty. You see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona. Don't forget Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. Won't you get hit to this timely trip? When you make that California trip, get your kicks on Route 66 and also in Seligman, Arizona.
What a guy. I didn't actually put the picture in. I went there twice, and the second time, this is 2013, he was still cutting hair. Angel's 98 years old now, he's still alive. He's now been married to Vilma for 66 years, and I got my haircut in 2013, and one of the funnest things I've ever done was to sit in his barber chair and have him cut my hair. And if you come to the museum, you can see a before and after picture. And I'm smiling from ear to ear. So God bless.
The cool thing about Angel too is he's still at the museum every day. And he's not cutting hair anymore, but he'll still meet you, tell you stories. He's still just as sharp as a tack. So we can't wait. We'll be celebrating him at 99 years old next year as the road turns 100. So it's really cool.
Yeah, he's 1 year younger than the road.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. So, the power of ordinary people. And if you learn systems thinking, you get a boost in your potential to do good because it teaches this we are all connected philosophy where because there's a larger system that we are all in, it's actually how that system is designed that impacts whether things work or not. Because when things don't work, it's not just like they don't work. They don't work because there's something going on in the environment. You know, it could be a nail on a road and you get a flat tire. But in the bigger picture, there's big stuff going on that we could do something about if we worked together. And there we go. So what can we work together towards? That was the question I asked earlier. There's a future history this photograph pointed to. Anybody care to guess what that is? Well, it's the history I learned at the UN. The world peace is a thing. It's not a fantasy. It's something we can work towards. We may not know how to do it. Folks at the UN, sorry, they don't know how to do it. But it's not that it can't be done. It's just the current approach needs to be rethought from trying to solve separate problems to looking at the big picture of the system in which we live. And as far as you all are concerned, talking about this can be a superhero power. It's just a conversation. Do we want things to stay the way they are, or do we want things to transform? Because it's not a, I don't advocate revolutions, because in revolutions, again, there's a winner and loser, and people tend to die. I'm proposing an evolution to a place reflecting that we really are one human family here on this precious little ball that Bucky called Spaceship Earth. And I love the animated movie Cars because it shows a town where people all want the town to work. And in the case of Fillmore, the hippie, and Sarge, the World War II Jeep, who's in the back of that picture, they're neighbors, they argue about everything, but they're still friends. It's a tremendous friendship portrayal. Of course, it's animation, but being friends with people who you don't agree with. I was at the OMA bombing museum yesterday before I came here. I met a guy at my table. It was amazing. He said, I am a conservative, religious, white male, and I'm friends with people who are not like me. He wasn't like he was prideful. He was just like, this is what I figured out. I don't care if you're different. I still want to be your friend. I was like, thank you, sir. I got his card. What a role model. So we can have that. And as far as what are we going to talk about? Do we want to flip the culture? It's a lot of the work has been done. Again, I mentioned Buckminster Fuller. He had principles that he explored and a game that he actually came up with. Instead of a laboratory science project, this was a social science laboratory project, played on a map of the planet as big as a basketball court. Fantastic. You'll see a clip in a minute. Deming, the power of cooperation and lifelong learning. Akoff, idealized design, which is where you design something without being constrained by the past. Clean sheet of paper approach. What do we want to do that we can do now? Forget about what people said wasn't possible yesterday. And Ryan Eisler, who I mentioned before, talking about an economic system where you are looking at what contributes, not just what destroys. So, these are things that are out there, but are not widely known and certainly not embraced widely. But people like Stephen Covey championed this way of thinking, where we find a solution that is everyone wins. You called it the third alternative, because again, there's going to be one person who says, my solution is right, screw you. There's another person who says, my solution is right. Win-lose. No, we want win-win. And so we get to what I said I would mention in the write-up for the program, SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This graphic is actually in your package. I thought it was so nice with the colors and all, I figured you should all have a paper copy. So it's in your package. And my take on the strengths question, because now it's about planning. We have the Stafford Air and Space Museum, which has the Apollo-Soyuz mission as one of its main themes, and is about to have the full-size Apollo-Soyuz display from Washington, D.C. Have you all heard that it's coming? They're building a new building to house it. It's going to be incredible. This was going to space with the theme of world peace. Bonkers that we're going to have that in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City National Memorial Museum has educational programming like what I went to yesterday, where they bring people together to talk about how do we have conversations where in the end we reach some kind of a consensus instead of fighting and arguing and somebody wanting to blow up a building. The Gold Dome Bank building in Oklahoma City. Buckminster Fuller designed this structure called the geodesic dome. We've got one of the first ones ever built in Oklahoma City, built in the 1950s, and in the process of being renovated to turn it into a place for a concert venue. awesome what we've got here. Weaknesses, well, we haven't been a team before, so we got to learn how to come together around a common theme. And, well, there are more opportunities, like connecting International's 250th birthday, or I should say there are opportunities where it's not just love thy neighbor, but it's love and work with thy neighbor. Again, Buckminster Fuller, super well known in the 1960s, by the way. We had a World's Fair in 1967 in Montreal. He designed the USA Pavilion for that World's Fair. The building is still there. It's an environmental center, so it's lasted almost 60 years. And here is 2 minutes, I promise.
And behind the philosophy is one man who has spent a lifetime helping people do more with less. This is R. Buckminster Fuller, known around the world as Bucky. Now almost 90, Bucky Fuller is a cult figure to some. He's been called the Earth's friendly genius, while many folks have never heard of him. He has one of the longest entries in Who's Who, listing him as architect, writer, poet, mathematician, inventor, artist, and more. He coined the phrase spaceship Earth, but his purpose has never been seeking fortune or fame.
The world isn't working for everybody. Why isn't it?
Because they're trying to solve all the world problems with politics. And politics is based on very good policy. How do you cope with the fundamental inadequacy of life support on our planet? And all the great model of all economics is nowhere near enough to go around. This is completely ignorant of what you can do with modern technology. But we have the option now to make it, to take care of all humanity, the highest standard anybody's ever known. The whole game is being able to see our whole Earth at once. The beautiful map without any distortion, a relative shape and size of the parts, as a basic background, as one world island and one world ocean. And on that, we're then able to show where all the different resources are. Have to show where all the people are. Have to show where all the possible artifacts are that might be developed.
At a recent World Game session at U.S. International University in San Diego, one of the World Game players knew well how small and fragile the world can look. Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut from the first moon landing. We have the technology available to give everyone on Earth the highest standard of living in history, or we can destroy ourselves. At the end of the session, thousands of red chips are scattered over the map. One chip for each nuclear bomb in the world today. Buckminster Fuller has proved his point. Thick glasses and hearing aids keeps moving around the world, quietly helping us see things as they are and as they could be.
That was in the early 80s. Bucky was almost 90 years old, and he passed away at the age of 88. But not before, in 1983, he was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Reagan. Here's a 2-minute clip with the introduction from the president and then Bucky being given his medal.
Awarding our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This medal is given to those who have risen to pinnacles of achievement in their fields. It's a recognition of their accomplishments, hard work, and dedication for America and for humanity. The recipients of this award have touched all our lives with their contributions, strengthening the fabric of our society and improving the quality of our life. The men and women that we honor today come from across our land. Some children of immigrants, some immigrants themselves, many from humble beginnings. But they all share a quality that Carl Sandburg once summed up so well when he wrote, "Man is born with rainbows in his heart." These men and women never lost sight of them, living out their dreams in their adult lives. We call their award the Medal of Freedom because only in a free society, such as ours, do we have the opportunity to climb as high and go as far as our dreams, talent, and energy will take us. I'm reminded of a scene that took place in Washington, the first. R. Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, he's moving a little slow here, but there he is.
A true Renaissance man and one of the greatest minds of our times, Richard Buckminster Fuller has made contributions as a geometrician, educator, architect, designer that are benchmarks of accomplishment in their fields. Among his most notable inventions and discoveries are synergetic geometry, geodesic structures, and tensegrity structures. Mr. Fuller reminds us all that America is a land of pioneers, haven for innovative thinking, and the free expression of ideas.
I regret that he didn't live much beyond that, but his work survives him, of course, and I have a special place in the museum that celebrates his work, including acknowledging that Epcot Center has not just a geodesic dome structure, but a geodesic sphere that he helped them design. And if you go to Epcot, it's actually called Spaceship Earth. And there's a ride on the inside. And I once wrote to them, a little sidebar, and I said, it's Spaceship Earth. And they said, yeah. I said, but you're not selling his book in the gift shop. And they were like, oh, sorry, we're Disney.
Yeah.
They sell what they make. They don't sell other people's books. But I know the connection. And I've even got a letter in my files from them. It's a funny moment in my little journey. So, before he passed away, he came to give his final lecture traveling around the country. And he was in New York in 1983. It was called Integrity Day. I actually was one of the people who helped put the day on. So if you look at the picture on the left and you see Buckminster Fuller, just to the right of the photo and behind, that's me. And only integrity is going to count was the buzz phrase, because he taught in that day-long lecture that it's the power of personal integrity, where you figure out what's true, where you figure out what's possible, that's going to save the world. Don't listen to what other people tell you is possible. Very important lesson for me, because that childhood I referred to earlier, my father always said, don't dream, don't try, just get a job, dreams don't matter. I learned later in life, he hadn't realized one of his dreams, which is one of the reasons why he was such an angry person. But when you're a kid, you don't know that that's what's going on in the back of your dad's mind. So, integrity, learning what's possible. And in 1995, when he would have been 100, there was a huge event in Balboa Park, San Diego, where I met his daughter, and we became friends. And we remained friends until she passed away in 2021. We even went to a United Nations Foundation event, and it was a delight in my life to have this connection to his family. I miss her a lot. So, building a society based on peace rather than war. Kind of bold leap forward President Reagan knew can only happen in a democracy where freedom to innovate is part of the culture. In celebration of America's 250th birthday, I see this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And again, Oklahoma City's got the Gold Dome building. I was actually at the meeting where the mayor agreed to give the developer $3 million in city development funds, and the developer is putting $7 million of his own money into it. I don't have a date for when this is going to open, but boy, can I imagine doing an event there with music and stuff in a geodesic dome. It's going to be wild.
And wasn't there a point in time when it was at risk?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's almost been raised twice, I think. But it seems like it's holding at the moment. It seems like this developer in the city,
Fingers crossed, because I actually toured the building. I pulled off a miracle, and I got to go inside, and the guy who was selling it showed me, or his broker showed me it, and it needs work. But it's history.
Yeah.
You all know what it's like to restore stuff, right? Heck.
And once if it were gone, you never replace the set. That's why we all talk about preservation so much, because this is an original. This is it. This is why. So this is why it matters. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes. So, I had it in the write-up again for today, this we are all connected mindset. It can strengthen us, foster collaboration, and create impact, because whatever we're doing, when it's part of a larger mission, you know, the old expression of having something that's bigger than yourself to drive you, something that's bigger than our individual museums, that's about what are all the museums going to talk about. Obviously, we have to keep talking about what our museums talk about, but we can become known through a campaign of education that we all want to support a cultural transformation, because all of us want us to get beyond hate and divisiveness and the kinds of thinking that, you know, again, blew up the building 30 years ago in Oklahoma City. I think no matter what your museum is, that could be a thing that's in the conversation you have with yourselves as well as with your visitors. So, I invite you to ask yourself the SWOT questions. What could you also look for as your communication strengths, perhaps, your programmatic strengths? I mean, weaknesses, I don't like to talk about weaknesses. We all know how to figure those out. But opportunities and threats, I want you to, again, that's why I gave you the hard copy. I want you to think about what could you do, what are your superhero strengths. Again, we've got my cell phone number. I don't think we've got a whole lot of time to make this a big interactive conversation right now. What time do we have now?
We've got 20 minutes.
Okay.
And we can do some Q&A, obviously. Yeah, if you have questions.
Yeah,
or comments.
would people like to?
Can I talk about SWOT can I talk about SWOT for just a minute? So we all do SWOT analyses, and that's always part of strategic planning and so forth. One of the things I assume everybody does this, but just keep it in mind. It's not either or. And I think a lot of people really say, well, here are the strengths, and here are the weaknesses, and here are our opportunities, and here are our threats. They work together, and I think it's important to remember that as you're doing this with your boards and your staffs and so forth, that where there's a weakness, there's also an opportunity. Where there's a threat from an outside, there may be a strength within your museum to combat that threat. And I think sometimes I've witnessed organizations sort of forget that. It's either one or the other. And so I always encourage people when you're doing it, they're important to do, absolutely. Because you need to know what's out there. Where are we? How do we address? How do we come to a situation? What do we bring? What does our institution bring? Working with the community to make it better and all of that. But just keep that in mind. That with that, there's something that goes with it. If there's a weakness, there's an opportunity. If there's a threat, there may be an opportunity to overcome that threat, or whatever. Just keep in mind the parallels. There you go.
And actually, the weakness point, you remind me, because W. Edwards Deming, he wanted people to talk about weaknesses in doing what you're doing, because he wanted to then think about how do we change? What do we need to change? We need to change something on the inside. We need to change something on the outside. Maybe get a different supplier. Maybe get a different something, so that the weaknesses that were present yesterday are not present tomorrow. Continuous learning and improvement. Such a great philosophy that we should all look to learn and improve our entire lives.
And one of the things Steve really approaches as he looks at his museum and his approach to things, and I think is good for all of us, is that idea, if you do the same thing the same way over and over, definition of insanity, and you're expecting a different result. One of the things I also see with institutions often is they get really hung up on the weaknesses or the threats. And where I'm coming with that is, well, all this outside stuff coming at us, and there's nothing we can do, and we throw up our hands. And then 6 months later, we come back together, those threats are still there, and we throw up our hands again. Or are we going to actually use our strengths or do something different to try to overcome that? And then just go, and then concomitant with that is the weaknesses side. Our museum has these weaknesses, whether it's in not enough staff, not enough revenue, not this, that, the other. Okay. Revenue. But, and to the point, so what are we going to do about that? If low revenue or lack of revenue is a weakness, what are our strategies? Are we doing anything to change that? Are we putting in new fundraisers? Are we approaching a new membership program? What are we doing to try to turn that around? Are we telling our story better so that donors like and understand us better so they want to support us? And it takes all of it. There's no one set rule here to fix it. But you've got to make the attempt to do it. And the other thing that has to happen, I'm a big believer in this, we have to take action. We have to do something. People talk things to death. We have committee meetings to plan committee meetings to talk about committee meetings.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you all are, Though, you know, I talk about the fact that one of the great, one positive that came out of COVID was the ability to Zoom. The fact that we could connect, it's not ideal, face-to-face, much, much better, but that we can actually get some work done, get some things done, keep people safe, and do it. But then we started having Zoom meetings to have Zoom meetings.
Oh.
And well, we're gonna meet. And we're gonna meet for an hour, and we're gonna get all of our staff together, we're gonna do this. Okay, what are we going to accomplish? Could that have been accomplished in 2 emails? Did we really need to sit there and waste everyone's time for that hour? Or could it have at least been done in a 15-minute meeting? Boom, boom, boom. And so, one of the things I think in our industry we get hung up on is, well, it's either someone else's responsibility, or we have this issue and we're just gonna talk about it. Because if we actually do something, it's gonna take some work, and we're already overworked and underpaid. Well, we know that in the museum world, just like education, we get it. But obviously you're here because you care. And obviously you have a passion for and an interest in and so forth. So you want to make the change. But remember, what did Marguerite say? Be the change. No, was it Marguerite? Who said it? Be the change you want to see in others.
Maybe it was Gandhi.
Was it Gandhi? I don't want to get it wrong.
Margaret Mead.
Okay, sorry.
Margaret Mead was never underestimate the power of a small group of people to change the world, because that's really who's
Indeed, it's the only thing that ever did.
Yeah.
And I really do thank you.
Yeah.
This is good. But those 2 quotes, I think, can carry us. Be the change we want to see in others. Museums set up the place to storytell. Museums tell the history. Museums project to the future. And then a small group, we're working together to make a difference. We, collectively, probably can't solve the world's problems. I tried to over a glass of wine last night. I got close. At least with the wine, I thought I was doing a really good job on it. No, I'm just being smart.
You probably just needed a second glass.
Probably, that would have probably done it. But what can we do? And I know it's going to sound cliche, but brighten the corner where you are.
Yeah.
Steve is taking his museum and telling a great story in Stroud, America. Stroud, Oklahoma. Rock Cafe. So you go see Steve, have lunch at the Rock Cafe. You'll be supporting, you'll be thinking about cars and Disney and all the cool stuff. And you can set aside the world for a minute, but think about possibilities. And I think that's one of the things we need to all take time and do, is stop for a minute, forget all the negatives, forgetting all the negatives of the world for a minute, and say, what can I do? What can my museum do? What can we do to make something better for this day, for these people, for the museum visitors that are coming in, to make our community stronger, whatever it is, and just do that and be glad in it. Just say, I did this today. I accomplished this today. And that will help sustain you to the next time. And then the threats come in, things happen, and you do the next thing. And I did something well, and something made a difference, and I can feel good about it. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. So, here's some ideas about what we can do and what other people have done that we can learn from. There are, obviously, Route 66 turns 100, America turns 250. Guess what else happens next year? This book turns 75. The Conquest of Space. Before NASA existed, the rocket scientists wanted the public to learn that they had finally figured this stuff out. So they wrote a book, and it was public education. And not only did it educate them, it educated Walt Disney, who 4 years later put these people on television in a program called Man in Space. It was part of the Wonderful World of Disney. And I actually have both in the museum, obviously, and I'm delighted to think that we could do something similar. A book that says the conquest of hate, for example. It's just a quick little brainstorm. And next year, Star Trek turns 60. And there's a wonderful connection between Star Trek and NASA And we can leverage that a lot of people are going to be talking about Star Trek turning 60. I'm a Star Trek character, by the way, if you didn't glean the episode clip I showed. But again, Disney's Man in Space, the President's Council on Sustainable Development I mentioned, Visions for Tomorrow, a rather small entertainment organization called the Sci-Fi Channel in 2006 got inspired and put something together that had an awesome advisory group. And if you go into your handouts, you've got information about that program on the right side, not the left side. The left side is actually a detailed examination of what Walt Disney did once he got his hands on that book. So there's a big history of the man in space effort, Disney, space, and politics. On the right side, you've got what the Sci-Fi Network did, which Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California back then, and he wrote a big letter saying this is awesome stuff. And then if you go back in time, World War II generation, in order to win World War II, Hollywood actually got involved in getting everybody to be all in it together. The first motion picture unit run by Jack Warner of Warner Brothers. And the best thing they did that I'm aware of, because they were reaching the public, sometimes they were just reaching new recruits and doing like, how do you survive if your plane gets shot down? Jimmy Stewart did a 17-minute film called Winning Your Wings, designed to recruit people into the Army Air Corps, showing them what kind of a great life was ahead of them, and the great food you're going to eat, and the great friends you're going to make. And when you have this wing on your uniform, and you go into the USO Club, the girls, it was,
There you go.
And so these are things we can learn from. We've got, again, the Apollo-Soyuz mission here in Oklahoma. We've got what the Bombing Museum teaches. And now...
You mean the National Memorial?
Yeah, I know. I use shorthand, and it's
Let's call it the
insulting.
National Memorial Museum.
The National Memorial Museum, yeah. Yeah, we're not celebrating the bombing.
No.
We're celebrating the Oklahoma
resilience
stand.
and overcoming.
All right, I've learned that lesson today. Thank you.
Welcome.
And now, and I literally only found out about this a week ago. Michael Milken, who you don't hear about often. You hear about Elon Musk. You hear about a lot of tech. Michael Milken was on Wall Street. He was called the junk bond king. He's an older guy. He got caught back in the day when people on Wall Street actually got prosecuted, and he had a coming into Jesus moment, and he created the Milken Institute. And 20 years ago, when I was trying to network, I actually went to one of their conferences in Los Angeles. Leonard Nimoy gave a keynote speech. Turns out Michael Milken also loves Star Trek. Al Gore gave his first Inconvenient Truth presentation live before the documentary came out. This was high-level folks. Well, who am I? I felt like Forrest Gump. But I was there, and I even bumped into Michael Milken. And because I had heard about his Star Trek thing, I was carrying my replica Star Trek communicator from the original show. I was like, oh, hey, Michael Milken, nice to meet you. He said, hello. And he said, by the way, I'm Star Trek too. And I showed him the communicator. His eyes, he was like a kid. He said, what's that? I said, it's a replica, and it makes sounds. And I said, you know what? It's for you. I gave Michael Milken a Star Trek communicator. And now, 20 years later, he's gotten the vision of America turning 250, and he has put real money into building the Milken Center for advancing the American dream in Washington, D.C. Not a cheap place to set up, and it's not even just a museum. It's a cultural institution. It's opening on Saturday. They've been working on this. I don't know why I only heard about it last week, but I heard about it. So here it is for you all to know that here's a guy who wants to celebrate the American dream in Washington, D.C. with his own money. The idea at the heart of the American dream speaks to the aspirations of people everywhere. No matter who you are or where you come from, you should have the opportunity to build the life you want to live. And I can't wait to go there at some point, even though I'm kind of busy. But it not only is it financed and in Washington, D.C., but he likes movies. And when I heard about this a week ago, I heard he had a movie contest, partnering with Ron Howard's Imagine Entertainment. Submit a short film no more than 25 minutes. If we like it enough, Ron Howard will turn it into a real movie. So guess what I was doing over the last week? Cranking out a documentary about the museum, and I submitted it. September 16th was the deadline. Do I know that it's going to win? I don't. But you can't win if you don't try. So right now, there's 25 minutes worth of me talking and showing the museum, and including talk about my mom who had to deal with my father, because there's stuff that I pay tribute to the museum about actually not just the power of my mom, but the power of women. It's important. And let me get to the next slide. And here's about the movie contest. From minutes to movies, short fix.
Cool idea.
October 31st is when I'll know if I'm the winner. Keep your fingers crossed. Thank you. And next slide. Okay, so who have I been today? Gary 7 and Isis the cat. The end of season 2, a time travel episode where they go back to 1968 to do research. This guy accidentally gets beamed on board. He was really headed for Cape Canaveral, where his job is to tinker with a rocket that was going to put nuclear weapons in outer space. And his job is to make sure that it blows up and scares people out of doing something so stupid that, nuclear weapons in outer space could have led to World War III. So the whole episode is this wonderful story of a guy trying to keep people from messing up. And my dream of giving people hope is partly driven by not wanting people to mess up. Because if my father had had hope, he might have not been so angry and divisive his entire life and been so really bad towards my mom. And I want to give you another couple of minutes on somebody else who loves the space program and Star Trek and wants us to think in terms of doing something big.
We were able to dramatize a period piece, 30 years old, about 40,000 people in every state of the Union working towards one common goal and achieving the impossible. Something so impossible, it was considered madness to consider it for thousands upon thousands of years. Imagine what problems we could solve and the ills that we could cure if we chose to live the same way the people of Apollo did in the 1960s. Thank you, and God bless America.
Not bad, huh?
Not bad.
That's what we can do. And by the way, doing the impossible, it's actually a human thing. This is a book from the museum's archive, The Day the Universe Changed, a documentary from the 1980s on PBS, a British historian this time, showing how not just in America, but throughout human history, when the knowledge people had changed, their view of what the universe was changed. Again, going to the moon, nuts, until these guys said, not so nuts. And a world where we actually get along and come up with third way alternatives, nuts, not nuts. So the techniques are out there. So I want to encourage you, you can actually go to YouTube, to think about that, and think about it in my own humble way with the museum in Stroud. I've decided to kick something off next year. Happy to have help, and it's in your handout. I'm calling it the American Moonshot Project, where instead of going to the moon, outer space, we're going to inner space. A bold journey to inner space where we deal with this psychological dynamic that exists, that has existed for a long time, but does not need to exist forever. Because if you take the time to study people who have figured out the power of cooperation, including economically. Deming was a business guy, and he wrote a book called The New Economics, where he makes the case for an economics of cooperation instead of cutthroat competition. Competition is great, like the Olympics, where you're competing against somebody so you can be better, but cutthroat competition where you want the person next to you to die, not so. So this is what I am working to kick off in January. In the next 3 months, I hope to have enough conversations with people so it's not just me and my cat. I actually have a real black cat are doing it, but that's what's in your handout, and I would love to get your feedback on this. So thank you all very, very much.
Any comments, questions?
Yes, comments, questions,
Three or 4 minutes
please.
if you want. If not, we're good. You can have lunch next. Remember, you get to pick up your lunch and you get to sit in the bowl of the auditorium, which is sort of good. Yeah.
Sorry. Very, very fascinating and wonderful tips, and black hats are super, so I'm really happy. Can you give us as Ken mentioned before, you sit in a meeting to do a meeting to do a meeting. And a lot of times you have this idea, we will not leave until we reach consensus. And then that results in total nothingness. Because nobody, you'll never, somebody has to say, okay, these are great ideas, let's mesh them together. How do we move beyond that?
But that is consensus.
Yes,
When we mesh out
the
together.
meshing, yes, but the thing is, we're just still talking. How do you move past the talk?
Oh, you go ahead.
No, you're actually bringing back, because I've been at this a while. And in the early 90s, I tried to do something, and I was like, oh, I want everybody to agree.
Yeah.
Because I was a little inexperienced. And by saying, we're going to do this thing, and we're only going to do what everybody agrees to do, I opened the door to, it was actually a guy who I didn't know, but I was, I wanted. He made it was game for him to always block consensus. He would always say, I don't think so. And he was like, anyway. So we really fell apart because I had committed to consensus instead of, I should have gone for the Star Trek model, which is everybody talks, but then there's still Captain Kirk. And he's like, okay, I've heard everybody's opinions, now this is what we're gonna do. I had not given myself to Captain Kirk. I was more like, I don't know what I was. I was young. So I don't actually like consensus. But if you're stuck with it,
I'm
then
balancing between liking it and disliking.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the other side.
Please. Thank you.
So, Tulsa Symphony. We now on our 20th anniversary this year coming up. I'm on the board. I was there when we founded it because I was at the Arts and Humanities Council then when our Philharmonic folded and I had to help rebirth a new one. 20 years in the black, right? So we have, because the board committed to it. The thing we also changed is we adopted formal consensus. And for 20 years, that is how we've operated on everything we've done. So we have musicians involved, we have board involved, we have staff involved in the decision-making process. And it's messy. And sometimes, and it's painful. And sometimes, and it takes longer than just the top-down, this is what we're doing, Robert's Rules of Order, vote, and we're done. But then you always, again, with Robert's Rules, you have winners and losers. And what you don't want is the people going out to the parking lot to have the parking lot conference. Can you believe what we just decided? And we all know. So but how it worked for us in the early days, it was tougher because we were all getting used to it. We had one board member that was extremely difficult, and then in formal consensus you block. I don't agree. I'm blocking, and you can't move forward when somebody blocks. It's like, okay, so you have to just keep working it. And finally, what we learned though is that person needed to leave the board. Because, and they came to the conclusion on their own too, they simply could not look at the world the way the rest of us were. And even though we tried to see it just wasn't working, so they just did not mesh. So what I'm saying is, it's not groupthink so much, but you do have to have a group of people that sort of want to move in this direction together. We're gonna do this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about meetings where people don't want to be there. And
they're forced to be. And so, you have to just try to not make those meetings happen as much as you can. Who has to be at the meeting, who it's nice to be at the meeting, and then an agenda. These are the 3 things we're accomplishing today and no more. Or whatever it is.
Ken reminds me, the concept of board development is actually a thing. That's where I also fell down when I created this group. I was just like, okay, they look like good people, but we didn't actually get to know each other. There are sometimes board retreats and team building, and you actually get into each other's psychology
and learn
to
about each
figure
other.
out, can we actually be friends, not just colleagues?
Yeah.
Because then you can have hard conversations with people. This guy who kept saying, I don't like it, I don't like it, I never got to the place where I could actually have a hard conversation with him and just find out what was going on with this guy. You know, and I didn't want to assume, but I also didn't have it set up where I could have that conversation.
Right.
So tough conversations,
Yep.
building relationships, so important.
Yep, have to.
So important.
Hope
Any
that
other
helps.
comments?
Anyway, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
It's been a really,
Enjoy the rest of the
it's been a real
conference.
pleasure. A real pleasure. Hey, having you with me makes all the difference.
Well, I enjoyed being with you, so it's great. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Let me turn off.